Hello and welcome to another episode of the Brandon Ramsey College Basketball Show. We are doing today's show just a little bit differently. First of all, we are live on YouTube and on Twitter right now. So if you are watching on Twitter, please make sure you're following me at BRamseyKSR. And if you're watching on YouTube, please make sure you are subscribed to the Brandon Ramsey College Basketball Show. But we're actually going to do an episode of Chalk Talk, a recurring series on the Brandon Ramsey College Basketball Show YouTube channel. And we are just going to simply dive into the film room and break down some clips that I cut up from the Kentucky at Alabama game. I did not have time on Sunday to do some travel and everything to get into the film breakdown the way I normally do on Twitter or to write my post on KSR. So I just figured what better time to do a Chalk Talk episode than right now to discuss the game. Obviously, this is one where Kentucky came up short after getting out to a big early lead. Alabama quite simply just had too much talent down the stretch, and Kentucky couldn't keep up despite winning the turnover battle, despite doing a pretty darn good job on the boards without getting totally killed by Alabama from three-point range. Alabama made 11 threes, Kentucky made 9, so that wasn't necessarily a backbreaker as well. However, as I tweeted yesterday at BRamseyKSR, I believe I know Kentucky was 6 of 15 on layups, and I'll pull up the tweet to make sure I have this correct. But from 2-point range, Alabama was 21 of 30, 70%. Kentucky was under 50%, 20 of 42. So just a lack of finishing really made it tough for the Wildcats, and that's been an issue for them at times throughout the season, and obviously this gets more and more pronounced now that you're missing Lamont Butler, Jackson Robinson, Kerr Kriisa. And something that I'd be interested to get some people's take on, and as always, you can dive into the comments either live on YouTube or on Twitter at BRamseyKSR, and I will get back to you throughout the show. Would love to get some people hopping into the chat here, but I was just having this conversation on KS Board, our private message board for KentuckySportsRadio.com. And I think that sometimes as fans, we can get really kind of caught up in the game-to-game nature of a college basketball season, and especially at Kentucky as those losses start to mount. You're only 500 in SEC play. You've lost 9 games overall. It can start to get frustrating because you're just starting to, there's just more and more losses. But if you look, I think you also kind of miss, you miss the forest for the trees a little bit when you're looking at, let's look at it from this standpoint. Today, when the AP poll comes out in a few hours, most likely Kentucky's still going to be a top 20 team in college basketball. They're number 12 in the net rankings as of this morning. They're third in the country, tied with some other teams with 8 quad one victories. If you would have asked me before the season, would you take being a top 20 team on February 24th with 8 quad one wins, tracking towards, probably somewhere between a 3 and a 5 seed in the NCAA tournament? Would you take all of that, or would you rather play out the season? And I think that this is the question I'd like to ask the chat here. Would you have taken that and said, yep, let's sign up and let's just fast forward to February 24th? Or would you wanted to have played out the season and kind of risked being worse in a worse position? Or, obviously you could have been better off as well. Personally, I would have to think long and hard about going ahead and signing that deal with the devil, so to speak. Now, let's take it one step further. What if I had told you that at this point, Lamont Butler would have missed 8 games and counting, Jackson Robinson would have missed 4 games and counting, and Kerr Kriisa would have missed 18 games and counting? Now, how does it feel to be a top 20 team in college basketball on February 24th, to be number 12 in the net, to be tracking towards potentially being a top 4 seed in the NCAA tournament, to sit here with 8 quad one victories, one of the best top end resumes in college basketball? At that point, we would all be getting hurt, tripping over ourselves to go sign that contract. I think, certainly I feel like that's where the rational fans would be living right now. So I'm not trying to excuse the losses. I'm not trying to make excuses. However, I do think that, as always, that context and perspective is very, very important for where you are within Big Blue Nation, again, here on February 24th. It is just you've had to somewhat suspend expectations a little bit here with these critical injuries to your second leading scorer, to your third leading scorer, to your backup point guard, all of which are probably your top three playmakers and ball handlers on your team. Like he has 4 games remaining. They're at Oklahoma on Wednesday. Then they return home to play number 1 Auburn on Saturday. Then they host LSU on the following Tuesday. Then they wrap up the regular season at Missouri. At this point, Kentucky's kind of on the fence of getting that single bye in the SEC tournament, staying as the number 8 seed as they currently are, or would they fall to the 9 and then end up having to play not just on Wednesday of the SEC tournament, but actually the very first game at noon Central in noon local time in Nashville on that Wednesday of the SEC tournament. But as I said, for today's episode of the Brandon Ramsey College Basketball Show, we're going full chalk talk. We're going full film breakdown. We are getting into the film room. I have, I don't know, probably 20 or so clips loaded up here. I can't promise we're going to get through all of them. We'll kind of see how this goes timing wise. But let's go ahead and step into the KSR film room and we will discuss a little bit of this Alabama versus Kentucky basketball game. I want to get things loaded up how I want here. There we go. That's what I'm looking for. Producing on the fly. But all right, let's flip into the film here. What I'm probably going to do is kind of let the clip run, and then we'll go back and break it down a little bit here. This is obviously one of Alabama's. This might be Alabama's first offensive possession of the game, or maybe their second one. But to me, this is just an example of some of the breakdowns that Kentucky has defensively throughout the season, and it all kind of stems from ball screen defense. Over here, you have Mark Sears on a side getting a ball screen from Grant Nelson. Travis Perry, who's, let's face it, he's outmatched trying to guard Mark Sears. He kind of jumps out like he wants to down or weak or ice this ball screen, meaning he doesn't want to let Mark Sears use the ball screen and come off. Instead, he wants to force him downhill towards the baseline. Now, if that's what they're trying to do, which again, it kind of looks like it is based on how he jumps out, then it's Amari Williams' responsibility to be in drop coverage here and contain the dribble drive. Obviously, he never really steps over to contain that drive, but then also Perry gets a little bit of a forearm into Sears here. Sears flops around as he's prone to do, but then Travis Perry also sort of gives up on the play at that point while Sears is still going on. Like, it would have been better off to get a foul call at that point, but now you see Amari just sort of pointing at him instead of sliding down there and having some rim protection, especially because we're not concerned with Grant Nelson shooting this 3-point shot here. But without Amari containing the dribble drive, now Andrew Carr has to step over. He's a little bit late, but it's not necessarily his fault at this point. That leaves Clifford Amore wide open for a dunk. That's the type of lack of dribble penetration, the lack of containing dribble penetration that we have seen throughout this season for the Wildcats. Going on to the next clip here, there's a lot of really good clips. There's periods of this game where Kentucky played at a really high level, but I want to continue to showcase and highlight Amari Williams' passing ability. Again, this is a 7'5" man making this play here, as getting into potential zoom action here on this side, but then also notices that Jaron Stevenson is just completely not guarding Andrew Carr, whips a perfect pass to him. And these are the shots that I think are going to be really, really big down the stretch of this season for Andrew Carr. If he can, I think he was 3 of 5 from 3 against Alabama. If he can become a 1 to 2 threes per game at 33 to 35% type of guy, that will really make this offense even more dynamic for Kentucky. Another offensive clip here. See Kobe Brea cutting up to the basketball. Just a little bit of hand down, man down there for one of the best shooters in college basketball. We've seen Brea do this a handful of times throughout the season, but I really love this unique cut that he's making on the inside of some screening action. First of all, obviously, teams are really trying to chase him and keep him from being able to come off cleanly over the top. So it does give him a little bit better of an angle as well. But it also almost tricks defenders into going up through, because now at this point, you almost want to go up through the other way and meet him there. But that just intuitively doesn't make a whole lot of sense. So you end up now almost chasing him underneath, but it ends up taking the route of going up through, and he can kind of flare it into some space. He's obviously very deep here, but the closeout is maybe a step short. Hand doesn't get up in time or ever get high enough, and you have one of the best shooters in college basketball knocking it in. It's a good defense here from Kentucky. They were able to force 15 turnovers on Saturday. If you would have told me that they forced 15 turnovers, would have said they had a chance to win, which, for a large portion of the game, they really did. But going back here, I've talked about it a lot. You can be often wrong, but never in doubt. Do I love the idea of Kobe Brea helping off of Mark Sears? I don't care where he's standing. I kind of want him to be scared to death of giving up a three to Mark Sears. But if you're going to go, then hey, let's go, and you better make a play. And he made a play here, got his hand on the dribble. Jaren Stevenson's not really thinking about passing. I'm sure he's higher turnover than he is assists. I don't have the stats in front of me, but I feel pretty comfortable saying that. So Kobe Brea went and made an aggressive play. And that's how you start to force more and more turnovers, something that I would continue to like to see this Kentucky team do. Colin Chandler, we're going to talk more and more about him in the coming clips. Brings the ball up the floor here. He's able to get downhill, draw the help. I mean, there's only so many guys on this Kentucky team at this point, and this is somewhat true even with if you add in the three other playmakers, but there's just not a whole lot of guys on this team that have the true downhill playmaking ability to draw additional help and get other guys open. And Colin Chandler has some of that in flashes because he's such a quick twitch player. He can flip and get downhill in a hurry. I mean, here he kind of, doesn't completely beat Aden Holloway, but he beats him enough to get Jaren Stevenson coming in here, and especially with a game plan of, hey, that they were willing to let Carr get his. Carr has happened to play really well, and especially early on, it was why Alabama was getting beat, was because Carr was beating them at their own game plans. But that's a great play there by Colin Chandler as well. Now we'll talk about Chandler again. Now, as you're watching this, think back to that first clip that we watched with Travis Perry kind of getting beat in the ice or down ball screen. This is just the difference, I think, right now between Colin Chandler and Travis Perry, especially on the defensive end of the floor. I think that Colin Chandler is the best defensive player on this Kentucky team, not named Lamont Butler. He has not only the athletic and the physical tools, but seems to have the mental acumen to really, really be a high-level defender. And you can just see that whereas Travis Perry down to the ball screen and then essentially just got beat to the rim and caused a chain reaction of failures on Kentucky's part, Colin Chandler was able to hold his own, partially just because he's taller, he's longer, he's more athletic. So you see him here once again jump out to down the ball screen. If you're going to down them, like Andrew Carr has to get over here. So I'm not sure if that's a communication issue, if that's a schematic breakdown, what that is, but you do have some poor positioning here from somebody, whether it's Colin Chandler or Andrew Carr, in terms of ball screen defense here. But just the athleticism and just the constant urgency that Colin Chandler plays with allows him to stay with Mark Sears. I like that these other guys don't go over help. Once he's inside of the arc, we would much rather Mark Sears have to score twos than be able to kick it out to the other shooters. Stays with them. Good short closeout here on a really a non-shooter in number 10 for Alabama. Brandon Garrison closes out short, but still gets a hand up to contest it. And there you are to rebound. That's a very good kind of all five guys in blue, very good defensive execution there on that last clip. Anonymous in the comments says, go over all the fouls they called on Oweh and Chandler. Well, we're not going to get into a lot of that because I don't like talking about the officiating. I think it's, probably gets overblown. But not only did those guys, I thought, pick up a couple of cheap fouls, there were definitely some instances, probably Oweh having two or three of them. I know Travis Perry had one as well, where Kentucky drove to the basket and was getting an awful lot of contact without things getting without the whistle blowing. So the officiating was admittedly frustrating, I think, down in Tuscaloosa. There's another good Colin Chandler clip coming up here. Yeah, again, this level of playmaking, it doesn't really exist on this Kentucky team now without Butler, Robinson, and Kriisa in the games. I'm not saying that Colin Chandler is the best player on the team by any means, but the way he's played in these last couple of games, I do think that if you have to continue to play some games without Butler and Robinson and Kriisa, then you have to really consider turning the keys over to Colin Chandler. I think he's a guy that has the talent to compete with some of these best teams in college basketball, especially as the game starts to slow down for him and he's becoming more and more comfortable. It's just a one-on-one beat going downhill to his offhand against Mark Sears. And then he has the athleticism, unlike probably anybody else on this Kentucky team, to get up and finish into the chest of Grant Nelson, who's a really good rim protector. I think Otega Oweh has the athleticism to get there, but quite frankly, between the skill that it would take to drive that downhill with his left hand and then to elevate and actually finish it, I legitimately think that Colin Chandler could be a step ahead still of Oweh in that sort of a position. We've given Colin Chandler some praise here, but we're going to talk about this in a couple of different clips in terms of throwing the ball to Brandon Garrison, and then just things that aren't good end up happening. But let's go back to the beginning of this clip as Colin Chandler's bringing the ball down the floor. I know that Brandon Garrison's asking for it, but unless this is for a reversal, I guess that's where I'll stop short of really blaming Colin Chandler here. But if you're going to throw it to Brandon Garrison here, like, he needed to have stopped, because if you're throwing it to him to drive it, then you really just shouldn't be throwing it to him. But Garrison just needed to stop and then get into a reversal. I know his man wasn't back yet, but this is just not what you need from him. So it was kind of a risky spot to throw it to him at first, but you live to fight another day. And then here, even more so, look at where Brandon Garrison is. He's got Grant Nelson all over him, and he's getting pushed out to like almost the elbow extended. What's the point of entering that ball to him there? Like, what's he going to do with it? And it's fine to get some ball in post action, but let's face it, we kind of know that it's not coming out a lot when it goes in to Garrison. You do get a good backside cut here by Ansley Olminar. Like, you might have had him right there with a quick little shovel pass that you could have got something going to the rim. But Brandon Garrison has to understand that after 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, after 5 dribbles, like, nothing good is happening probably. And like, even here, you probably could have got a kick out to Chandler there. You had Noah relocating with a bigger guy who's not comfortable guarding him. Probably after that second dribble, it has to trigger, not just in Garrison's mind, Mario Williams still as well. It has to trigger in their mind, hey, like, I've made 2 dribbles. I haven't gotten an advantage against my man yet. So it's probably time to do something with the basketball. End up turning it over here. Let's see, go back to the comments. Colin Chandler is going to be a really good player. Hopefully he doesn't transfer back to Utah. This play where they call BG on the travel. BG should have hit. Yeah. I mean, I think he had Ansley on the cut. Then he definitely had opportunities just to kick it out. I mean, I would love for him to get it to Ansley there. But even if you don't, I mean, that's asking a lot of your backup 5-man. But then again, you just have to live to fight another day. You can't have these 5 dribble possessions where then something bad ends up happening. And it just happens too often right now with Brandon Garrison. Really good set action here from Coach Pope. I believe this was out of the media timeout, the under 12-minute media timeout. And again, this playmaking from Amari Williams is pretty spectacular. But I love using Kobe Brea as a back screener because it gives you an opportunity to get something towards the rim, because teams aren't going to really want to help back off of Brea. Alabama does a decent job here of switching it and staying with him, but then because of Williams driving it at the same time, you ended up in a position where both defenders went with Williams on the drive. Brea ends up wide open for 3. Great play by Amari Williams there. as well. This is more just I I wish, and this is part of the problem, honestly, with Kentucky, but it's hard to know sometimes where the defensive breakdown comes from because it's hard to place blame on any one player. It's you don't know which one is screwing up. Again, we're going to talk about Kentucky downing the ball screens. And it's something that Coach Pope talks about a lot. So I think they want to down these side ball screens. And you have Kobe Brea out here kind of forcing him to reject the ball screen and head downhill towards the baseline. It's number 15, Stevenson, a guy who's not overly comfortable handling the basketball. But again, if you're going to down them, especially if you're guarding number 11 Clifford Amore, like he's not a threat outside of the paint. So Olminar is all the way hugged up here on him. He has to get back, like literally towards the block, and be ready to guard Stevenson as you down the ball screen. But instead, there's nobody there. So as Brea forces him to reject it, which isn't Brea's fault, now he just gives up a straight line drive to the rim. And at that point, Stevenson's too big for Brea and Olminar to contest it at the rim. He just kind of give up an easy bucket there late in the half for no reason. This is a tough one here, just in terms of the urgency and the concentration of Otega Oweh. There's too many lapses on a game-to-game basis, and this is really, really tough. And man, like you have to be so tough as a player to overcome this. And this is what the film room is all about: is just showing these quick little lapses in concentration. And it's something that Otega Oweh has to continue to get better at. But watch him right now. When Aden Holloway gives this ball up, you'll see Oweh just stand up and relax ever so slightly right there. And now it's like, oh, shoot, now I got to go again because I've relaxed. And Holloway immediately goes back to get it beyond the arc, goes up through the little handoff. Bang. I think Holloway made 5 threes in this game on Saturday. It's another example of Mark Sears getting downhill. They really targeted Travis Perry at times when he was in the game, and again, I think that's why. And Colin Chandler was in foul trouble. He ended up fouling out of the game, so it's hard to say that he should have or needed to play more. But going forward, you might need to, and maybe you should play him more when he's not in foul trouble, because somebody here has to be able to step over and contain this drive. I don't mind Travis Perry making Mark Sears drive. I would rather go up 2 than 3. I don't want to let him dribble into threes, but like 10's not a threat from the perimeter. Amari Williams used to be like all the way in here helping deal with this drive. Like, hey, let's get him to throw it to 10 out on the perimeter. But Amari just needs to be more involved in things as they go to the basket. And he barely even knows that it's happening. And when he does, he just kind of turns and watches. Now you're in a position where Ansley has to help at the rim. But again, like, get in there. We're not worried about this guy. We are worried about the drive, protecting the rim, and then certainly the dump off path to Sherrill here. And he's just late getting in there, but he should have been in there the entire time. Like, his heels probably should have been on the restricted arc this entire possession, and yet he never really gets there until it's far too late. Into the second half of action here. Similar little play, trying to get Kobe coming off, kind of the Peja action here for a handoff, but it also serves as what Kentucky threw in a little counter coming out of the half to go high-low from Williams to Carr. That's 2 straight games now where Carr's been a much more of a focal point offensively again, kind of going back to where he was prior to the back injury, and he was a big part of some big-time wins. I mean, he was dominant at times in the win against Duke very early in the season, and we've seen him kind of become a shell of himself during and while he's fighting through some of this back stuff. But maybe you're getting him late in the season here, sort of out of his shell and back to what he was before. Played very well, I thought, against Alabama at 17 points, certainly the most he's had in a while. This is really good defensive execution here by Kentucky. A few things that I like. One, I mean, teams are targeting Trent Noah as well defensively, but he does at least seem to have such a good idea of what the plan is. He does at least execute that, and he's in good positions. He gives himself the best chance to hang in there. He doesn't have some of the athletic tools to do it at the highest level, but he is at least thinking the game, as you see here, by getting underneath this stuff when guarding number 0 Philon, and he's just there to meet him on the other side. Then at least a halfway decent closeout by Carr, moves his feet to stay in front. Amari Williams, active hands inside. Then you get Colin Chandler, who can come down and make a play on the ball. Alabama ends up getting a timeout. Like, would have been awesome to get the steal. Would have been just as good, really, to get a jump ball in that position, in that situation, because Kentucky did have the possession arrow, but still good defensive execution up to that point from the Cats. Here's a tough one. You get Aiden Holloway to miss. It's a 4-point game right now. You get the rebound. Look right now, that's enough separation. Colin Chandler's fast enough. Carr sees him right now. Look at that separation. There's nobody back. I appreciate valuing the possession. I really do, because we're going to show a couple clips here coming up where I just don't think that Kentucky values the possession at a higher enough level. So I appreciate valuing the possession, but that pass has to be thrown. Like, you have some margin for error there to throw it over the top of Chandler and him to be able to chase it down and go lay it up or dunk it and make this a one-possession game. You turn it down, and then you end up not getting anything better than you would have gotten because Amari Williams just loses the ball. And like that's just frustrating. Again, Amari Williams has been incredible, and I want him to try to make every play that he wants to make, especially in the absence of Butler, Kriisa, and Robinson. But just turn it into a post move there, or let's just back it out and throw it to Carr and see if he can make a three. Like, you just can't lose one like that in that situation. Now it's a 3-point game for Kentucky. Get out. There's a good example of downing the ball screen, but you also have Brandon Garrison in the correct position. It's one of the first times, honestly. I mean, it's certainly from the clips, we've shown 3 different times where Alabama scored because Kentucky downed the ball screen and the forward or the secondary defender wasn't in position. At least this time, Brandon Garrison is in position, and that's why you see they don't even try to drive it there, because if he would have, there just would have been nowhere to go. Throw it back to Garrison. We're closing out short against him. Good defense so far. Good defense so far. Trent Noah doing a pretty darn good job walling off this drive, but he just lets him get just a step too deep, and Mark Sears is just a really good player. I think the possession before this, I believe he had hit a 3, so there was just 2 possessions back-to-back here in a period where Kentucky was down 4, down 3, really knocking on the door, and the best player on the floor just stepped up and played like an All-American. And we've talked about it at different times this season. That's just what Kentucky doesn't have this season, is that next level type of guy that can just say, hey, I'm taking over this game. I'm going to help win the game. Mark Sears did that for Alabama, and certainly with a depleted roster, I wouldn't expect anybody necessarily to do it for Kentucky. But tough one here. I mean, Trent Noah didn't do a bad job there. Mark Sears is just better. Now you're down 5, get a good turnover, and oh my gosh. Like that just can't be. Talk about valuing the possession. That just can't be what you get. Like, great job by Brandon Garrison here, being in here to help cause this turnover and get the steal. But again, I don't want to limit his aggressiveness, because he does have some playmaking in him. Like, he is a good passer from the catch, and he can make a lot of those reads. That's why you see him have like a 2-to-1 assist to turnover ratio, which I have a feeling that for guys that play as much as him, that have the ball in his hands as much as him, probably not very many backup 5 men that have a 2-to-1 assist to turnover ratio. So I don't get on Brandon Garrison the way some people do, but like, somebody else has to touch the ball on this possession unless you're going to dunk it. Like, if you want to drive that thing and dunk it, by all means, go do so. But if you end up shooting a layup from this far away, running, doubly contested by 2 elite rim protectors, that's just not a good shot. You have to value the possession to enough. Like, okay, push it here, push it here, push it here, boom. Like, right now, once he's back like that, That just needed to be like just kind of dribble it over here, let your momentum stop, pick it up, and then either kick it to Carr or whoever's trailing the play here can come get it from you. But you just got to have something better in that position here. But still, Kentucky's down here with the ball, down 3. And this is where I start to get really, really frustrated on Saturday night. We just showed a bad shot, a selfish decision from Brandon Garrison. Do I think he's a selfish player? No. Was that a bad decision? Was that a selfish decision to shoot that last layup? Yes. Was it a wasted possession? Yes. But what Kobe Brea has to understand is that it's equally selfish of him to not shoot in this scenario. It can't happen. It can't continue to happen, or he's just going to have to sit on the bench. Now, he was great. He scored 20 points. He was half the reason that Kentucky had a chance to win this game at different points. But watch this. Shoot it, shoot it, shoot it. Doesn't. Shoot it, shoot it, shoot it. Finally, the most, I probably said shoot it, 7 times in there. Like, let's circle all of the shots that would have been better than the one that he got in, and think back to some of the ones he squeezed off and hit in the first half. And that's what makes this so confounding and frustrating. Right here. This is what Kobe Brea wants as a shooter. Good screen, drop coverage, pull up and shoot that. On the step back, look at where these contests are compared to where he ends up shooting it. Shoot that one. We're lucky to not turn it over. Boom. Right here. Look at where this is the worst one. Look at where this contest is compared to where it ends up being. But then he stunts. Now he's really wide open, probably even a better low contest. Doesn't shoot it, but then lets him get all the way up here. And then this is the one that we shoot. There's literally 5 or 6 better shots. 5 or 6 better shots from Kobe Brea, one of the best shooters in college basketball, than the one that he ended up taking. He has to be more aggressive. And again, I'll say it. The previous clip was a really bad shot by Brandon Garrison. The decisions on this possession by Kobe Brea were equally as bad. And it can be hard for some people to wrap their head around that. Some people might not even agree with me on that, but I believe it to be true. Kobe Brea turning down 4 or 5 good looks on that possession to end up shooting this one is just the same thing as what we just watched Brandon Garrison do. And it becomes a problem, especially with a depleted roster, when your most talented guy still in there, one of your most talented guys won't shoot the basketball in the biggest possession of the game to that point. Now, I wanted to show this one because on the previous possession from this, which I didn't have clipped, Amari Williams jumped out and blitzed a ball screen 28 feet from the basket, fouled either Marcus Sears or Aiden Holloway, doesn't matter which one. They go to the foul line, make 2 free throws. So that's Kentucky kind of doing something differently, being aggressive in ball screen situations, something that some people, and trust me, this is not like me versus Big Blue Nation. Like, I'm a Kentucky fan. We all just want Kentucky to win the games. So I'm not trying to like stick it to the fans and saying like, well, see that this is why Coach Pope knows more than you. I'm not doing that shtick. But this just goes to show like that there isn't always this magic recipe. Oh, you want to blitz the ball screens? Okay, fine. Amari Williams fouls 28 feet from the basket, and they just get 2 free throws handed to him on the previous possession. Oh, you want to play zone defense? Okay, fine. Hey, Kentucky's not that great defensively. I'm not going to tell you they shouldn't try different things, but all right, Kentucky goes zone. Boom, 3-point shot, wide open 3-point shot for one of their best shooters in Youngblood. So that's 5 points on back-to-back possessions where Kentucky's trying different things defensively. Again, you want to hard hedge the ball screens, knock yourself out. You want to play some zone, knock yourself out. In the film room, though, there we go. 5 points on 2 possessions. Now, let's be real. That happened plenty of times when you're playing man-to-man, too. I'm not saying that those 2 clips showcase, well, that's why we should never do anything else. I'm just saying it's not a magic elixir. Colin Chandler being pretty darn good defensively here and playing hard. Has to continue to play more, I think, down the stretch in the absence of Robinson and Butler. His ability to not get screened, like here he is, he downs the first one, then he ends up fighting over this one. That's good. Comes back, like Filan's not going to shoot that little floater. Gets back in front of him. That's great. That's great there. Move the feet, championship chest. Good little dig by Carr and good recovery on a non-shooter. Good aggressive closeout on a shooter by Kobe Brea. Then a great play by Brandon Garrison at the rim to get that block. That's big time. Now here's another one. Game's probably, going to be tough to come back from down 9 at this point, but like you have the ball and we know Kentucky can score in bunches. It's just not two things here, not valuing the basketball. And again, we talked about it earlier about throwing it to Brandon Garrison in certain situations where it's like, what's he going to do with it? What's Andrew Carr going to do with it that's like super exciting from this point? You're going to throw it to him in transition 25 feet from the basket. Is he going to shoot it? No. Is he going to go is he going to go get a layup? No. So, I mean, I get, hey, like Andrew Carr's asking for it. So that's on him to some extent too, especially when you ask for it and then turn your head. But like, I don't care if he's asking for it or not. What's he going to do that you can't do, Amari, with the ball right there? Like, let's maybe get in. Let's let Travis Perry set a little down screen. Let's just get into zoom with Brea coming off. Or, same thing over here. There's just no need to throw the ball to Andrew Carr in transition 25 feet from the basket. The reason you throw passes in transition are for layups or rhythm threes. If you're not doing one of those two things, then you probably should just keep handling the basketball. That's true even if you're 7'5", man, because now Sears hits a home run 3 and the game is over. So there we have it for today's film session. I hope you guys all enjoyed getting to get into the film room and the X's and O's a little bit in today's episode. Obviously, this won't be like a podcast episode like a lot of these generally are, because nobody's going to want to listen to that without getting to watch it. But we will continue to mix in some of these Chalk Talk episodes throughout the rest of the season. I certainly enjoy doing them, and I think some folks like getting into the film room some as well. So thank you all to the about 250 of you watching live. If you are watching this sometime in the future, please still make sure you leave a like on the YouTube show. You can subscribe to the Brandon Ramsey College Basketball Show as well, where we have live episodes of All Fired Up with Brandon Ramsey every Wednesday at 12:30 p.m. Eastern Time, and then these podcast type episodes on Mondays and Fridays. And then also, as always, just make sure you're following me on Twitter at BRamseyKSR for all of the best college basketball coverage as we near the best month of the year, which is March. So thank you all for being here. Thank you for watching, and I hope you have a great start to your week.